Welcome to another session of The Truth as We Know It. My name is Michael Price. I'm here in Louisville, Kentucky, and I'll be joined today by my friends Steve Smith and Paul Moffett as we review the results of a survey that we posted this week to a group of friends who will comment on news and other items of interest that have struck them this week. We asked these selected individuals two questions. The first, what topic or news item caught your attention the most this week? What we want to know is, no matter what their source of information, what story stuck in their mind? What was significant to them? The second question we asked was, what subject has occupied your thoughts the most this week? Now, this could be something personal or social or political, but what's on your mind? And our hope is by discovering what's on the mind of other individuals and sharing what's on our mind with them, that we can promote a better understanding of how people are digesting the news and how they're reflecting on the news. The answers to our first question, what topic or news item caught your attention the most this week, included riots in South Africa, the revelation in a new book that General Miley thought it was a Reichstag moment. Also, General Miley's statement that the military would not let a coup happen. COVID-19, still on a lot of people's minds. News about recent books documenting Trump's presidency and his 2020 presidential campaign. A CNN interview with author Michael Bender about his book, Frankly, We Won This Election, in which we learned that there were multiple times that Trump called for the military to be deployed and to use live ammunition against protesters. The fact that anyone making minimum wage cannot afford a two-bedroom apartment anywhere in the U.S. without exceeding 30% of their income for housing. Haiti, once again. Wildfires in the western U.S. and in the Amazon, where fires will contribute more CO2 to the atmosphere than the forest will absorb for the first time in history. Severe flooding in Europe. Local news, Marty Polio, the JCPS superintendent, received a glowing report from the school board. All oversight has been lifted, pleased with his work through COVID. The Texas legislature, where Democrats split, creating a lack of quorum. The new books that tell what Trump did and said and who he listened to concerning January 6th. President Biden's meeting with Angela Merkel of Germany. Climate change, floods in Germany and Belgium, and fires in the western U.S. Why 30 to 60% of the population, depending on region, has not taken the COVID shot. Flooding in Germany and Belgium. Melting in the Arctic. The judge's reaction to the Dreamers policy. This really gets under my skin, having worked with people whose biggest dream was to work in the U.S. and send money back to their family. Just really gets to me. I had employees who had not seen their spouse and kids for years. This is just wrong. We could do better than this. As a frame of reference, these four major news outlets covered these topics. PBS NewsHour, the COVID surge, Afghanistan, fires in western states, and the DACA ruling. This week covered voting rights, the legislative stalemate in Washington, DACA, and General Miley's fear of a coup. Face the Nation focused on the COVID vaccine avoidance, voting laws, rising prices and inflation, new books on Trump and the insurrection. And the New York Times featured extreme weather, COVID, Haiti, and the ending of relief programs. In response to our second question, What subject has occupied your thoughts the most this week? Answers included, it's always a struggle, but love prevails. Our cat died this week. Plastic pieces and pollutants in the ocean harming ocean life and getting into our food chain. Transformation at the time of death. Revelations that Trump was much more dangerous and outrageous than we knew. COVID-19. Critical race theory versus equity. The events and outcomes of my daughter's life. The rising threat of COVID variants and the persistent resistance of so many to accepting the vaccine. Daughter's pending divorce. The COVID vaccine and Delta variant danger. Increase in COVID infections due to lack of vaccinations. Republicans not able to be who they are. They're dishonoring themselves and dishonoring the oath they took just to follow someone they know is not for Americans or American democracy. Death of Jenny, a family friend. The tragic death of a 42-year-old friend of our daughter. Younger people, 12 to 30, not getting the COVID shot, and why? Preparing for company from out of town. The Amazon rainforest now a net producer of carbon. And finally, I became a great-grandfather this past Thursday. Rowan Theodore Wright. He carries the name Theodore after my father, me, and my son. Makes you wonder what the world will look like when he is 83 in 2105. Where the discussion leads from there, it's, I don't know, any thoughts from what you were able to gather, Steve? You see any pattern or anything?
Well, similar to your observation that there's quite a variety of things that people, that grab their attention or that are on their mind. But the question about what subject occupied your thoughts the most, I think that tends to get to more universal things. One of my friend's cats died, so loss, death, grief. My brother-in-law who talked about consciousness and how important that was, and thinking about what are we doing here, kind of a thing. COVID-19, another kind of fear of death issue. So I find it interesting, but it seems like there's a spectrum that any of us might be on a given week, dealing with one of these universal things.
Yeah.
So for me, a lot of the problem that I see with a lot of this is, you think about this for a minute, how many countries now in the extant countries are not experiencing riots and murders and carrying on like that? Most of them, it's just like the majority of the countries seem to be, in some kind of turmoil like that. Killing one another, right, and shooting it, whatever it is, all the different ones. So eventually, so where's the place you can go hide?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like the billionaires trying that, Musk and Bezos are trying to find a place in outer space to go.
Yeah. They see the writing on the wall for billionaires, huh?
Right.
Yeah, but and the climate change would lead to those things: water shortages, migrations because of climate change, wars and riots in countries that don't deal with that well, and then you got a pandemic going on that's not being. We're not winning that war either, if you look at the globe.
Well, I have, I guess because I have taken up beekeeping recently, I start thinking about the bee behavior, which is not different from a lot of other species. When bees fill up the hive and things get crowded, they swarm. You know, the queen takes off with half the hive and they make a new hive. And throughout human history, we've been doing that where, things get crowded and people just head out to the wilderness and they push their way, whether it's through Central Asia or into North America and out west and so forth. And we have experienced an end of the wilderness in our lifetime. There's really no, that dark, inaccessible part of the earth. I mean, we can get to everything. And I feel like, and Paul, you've heard me say this many times, that overpopulation is the underlying cause of climate change because of the way we use resources and the way we exploit nature. It's certainly a motivation behind a lot of violence. That the pressures of population. It's the fact that's there, and it's one of the facts that nobody talks about anymore. If you remember back in the 60s and 70s, the population explosion was a huge topic. People were talking about it all the time, and the numbers were posted, and the awareness of it was very high. And now it doesn't seem like that. Doesn't seem like we're recognizing that. So I don't know. I hate to keep beating that drum, but it seems to be the essential question.
It is. I, thinking about that, looked up some statistics relative to my lifetime, born in 1948. In 1950, there were 3-point-something billion people in the world. And most recent estimates I was able to get was 8.5 billion people in the world. One of the things that told me was there was 5.5 billion people younger than I am in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. That's like when I see the list of graduates from school. I'm at the top of the list. Keep moving up. There's lots of people below me. Well, I don't want to beat that topic to death, but I guess in the kind of inquiry I'm interested in is why do people think the way they do? What causes people to fixate on whatever topic it is this week? This process of talking with folks about the news, I don't know how this plays out. Steve, the folks you talk to, do they seem to be interested in continuing this process? I enjoy our discussions, and I want to make sure we're moving in a direction that's promising. What are your folks' feelings?
A little mixed, I think. Some are more, expressed an interest in continuing to do it, and others, I think they're doing it because I'm asking them. So, a little mixed.
Is there anything that we might change? Any suggestions for changing the way we're approaching this? Yeah, I thought about giving a list of things and having people check off rather than asking them cold, but I kind of like the unsolicited, the unprompted responses.
Yeah. I find the responses we're getting to be interesting, and I do think it's we're getting what's on their mind, at least to a certain extent. I mean, I've always thought, it's a little hard to pick and choose what was on my mind the most during a given week. But at least what they're telling us is something that was up there.
Yeah.
It was high enough in getting their attention that they recollected it when you asked them the question. So.
Mm-hmm. Only one person that I saw mentioned the congressional deadlock, the fight over the voting rights bill, and the possibility of doing away with filibuster and so forth. That doesn't seem to be an issue that interests a whole lot of folks. When I brought it up, okay, something else in Washington. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Once again, the things that are really important, it makes me wonder what it was like to be around in Rome in 475, when the empire is about to collapse and people are not aware of it. This, according to Joe Biden now, this is the greatest threat to our democracy since the Civil War. I think he may be overplaying that, but it's still it is a big deal, but doesn't attract attention. And I guess the issue is, how do you make people pay attention to what they ought, what you think they ought to? They, it's instead of listening to the news and having the kind of serendipitous flow of information that you couldn't anticipate, you now get to pick your news source, and you can highlight, what it is you want to hear. Kind of like picking your pick list in music, I guess, Paul.
Well, that's it. Yeah, sure. It's just another way of entertaining ourselves, So pick it out this way, you pick that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think there's a fair number of people who just feel like the news is always so negative they don't want to tune in at all.
Yeah, I've had that response also. They don't. We had a couple of people who said they only watch the local news. They're not interested in the national news. They want to know, what's happening around me. And I guess there's something to that, what do I care about flooding in Europe? Can I do anything about it?
Mm-hmm.
No. So watching it seems to be a bit, like rubbernecking an accident or something. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Really, I can't affect anything about it. And I think the reaction is, well, maybe I can on a local level. I can impact what happens in my immediate area. But only a few felt that way. That's the other part of this dilemma in talking with folks is, I haven't spoken to any African Americans. I haven't spoken really to any Republicans. It's not that I wouldn't, it's just I don't encounter them because, you make a series of choices in your life over who you're going to associate with. And by the time you get to be our age, you've filtered out people who want to be around. So start poking questions and you're looking in the mirror.
Yeah.
True.